Hi, y'all. It's Brigitte Cutshall with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Taylor Scott. He is the founder and the author of Lead with Hospitality. I think it started as a book, or Scott or Taylor can confirm that. But I was just curious, to connect with someone like you. You're helping be a good leader for the younger generation, right? So, what prompted you to even write Lead with Hospitality?
Yeah, it was back during actually before the pandemic. I just sort of had this uh well, it started from curiosity. I wanted to really understand after spending so many years working in the hospitality industry in different roles, different lines of business for a few different companies. I was wondering, why is it we love certain leaders and we're willing to do more and work harder for some leaders than others? And then just one thing led to another, and I had some realizations, and I thought, I think I have something here. And that's where Lead with Hospitality was really born, because what I found was that we ended up loving our favorite leaders, and we would be inspired to take certain actions or more actions with certain leaders than we would others. And it usually came down 9 times out of 10 to how they make us feel. And for me, that was much like that's really why we love our favorite hospitality brands and
Oh, yeah.
hospitality destinations is how those places or those brands make us feel. So I sort of married the two and I found some parallels. And that's where Lead with Hospitality, the book, and then eventually Lead with Hospitality, the organization, and doing what we do with leadership development was really born.
So I'm assuming you work with corporations or different or schools. Um,
We do. We do. The organizations as large as, for example, the largest airline in the history of aviation, uh,
United.
to to smaller companies, startups, medium-sized companies. Yeah, we sort of have been blessed to be able to work with different types of organizations in many different industries.
And you mentioned the word curiosity, which is one of my favorite words, because I think that we need to be open to that. I think that is helps solve, I should say solve problems, create solutions for things. And we have so many things flying around all the time. If we just need to, instead of reacting, you need to like think and respond and be curious, right? And look at the different look at the cause. That's kind of what I recommend to people. And I like how you use the word curiosity. That's something we have in common, Taylor, is being curious. It helps us just look at the world differently, right? And your thoughts on that?
For sure, yeah. And for me, like I started when I started my career, it was at Walt Disney World
Oh,
down in Orlando. So, there I am. I'm like 18, 19 years old on my first internship at Walt Disney World. My role in the show, I was quick service food and beverage at Disney's Yacht and Beach Club Resort, working at the quick service food and beverage location out by the pool at the resort. But as many would tell you coming from Disney, there's more to the story there. And you end up going through a lot of training experiences and a lot of workshops. And so I learned, from a very young age, sort of what drove Walt. And
yeah.
so it was always Disney, as we all know, is a great storytelling company, and to this day, their brand is founded upon great stories. And so for me, I was just inspired with how Walt would always be curious to like, and there's those famous quotes, and some people watching and listening may have heard them or seen them, but there's one that comes to mind is like Walt would always say, we're gonna always stay curious and keep opening new doors. And by that he meant we're just gonna try to figure out new ways and fun ways and
Yeah.
inspiring to inspire more people.
I like how you use the word fun. As you mentioned, Walt, I went, one of the printers I worked with in the past, they're in Missouri. And isn't that where he's from? I can't remember the city, but
Marceline,
yeah, I was in Marceline and I got to drive by his house. And I guess apparently I was enamored with Walt too as a child. So that was very positive, how he had a positive impact on that community. And then he just kept pushing change. And didn't he start Disney with his brother? I think if I read that, remember correctly, or
yeah,
yes,
yeah, Roy and Walt. Roy
yes,
was
right.
the finance guy, and Walt was the dreamer and the imagination guy. He made a great team, the yin and the yang there together.
That's a perfect example of how you to succeed in an endeavor, not just business, is to have the yin and yang. I think that is something that we should consider. I joke that my husband and I, we've been married 37 years, we're very yin and yang, right? And we joke that we tolerate each other. But I mean, I think that's what life is about. We get to be open and curious and make it fun. And that's a great example. And the hospitality makes you feel, my feeling from that word is feel welcome, right? That's kind of how my takeaway is from that word.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was in my first leadership role at Gaylord Palms Resort and Convention Center down in Orlando. This was in 2002. It was awesome. The opening day was 02/02/02. So February 2nd, 2002 at 2:02 p.m. Fireworks in the atrium. It was great. But about a month prior to that opening day, I was on the leadership team there as a housekeeping manager. And the general manager brought in a guest speaker to talk to all the salaried leaders, to get us, inspired and fired up for the opening. And this guy came in and he said, friends, let me tell you something. Whether you're in hospitality for the next 2 years or the next 20 years, I want you to always remember that the essence of hospitality is the ability to make people feel welcome, comfortable, and important. And then I went and I worked at all these different places and several different leadership roles, varying levels of leadership, different lines of business for 20 years. And that's where I start the story. I start the book, Lead with Hospitality, with that story, because I'm also here to tell you that the essence of inspirational leadership is also the ability to make people feel welcome, comfortable, and important.
I like how you're using the term leadership rather than managing people. I think that kind of perspective turns people off the word manage. I'm not in the corporate world anymore, but my understanding some managers aren't really in those roles anymore. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what they're
Yeah,
like.
the reality is they are two different things.
Yeah.
And the reality is we really do need both. So
Yes.
management, think process, product. You got to manage processes. I mean,
Yes.
lead people. I've heard it said another way that management is power over people, but
Yeah.
leadership is power with people. So there are times when you got to be a great manager, and there are also times when you got to be a great leader. The real skill and the real development, the real work I believe we all have to do is to A, understand the difference, and
Yeah.
then B, understand when to deploy which.
Correct. As you were talking again, maybe bring me back to my younger years. My manager was actually a good leader. You know what I'm saying? He had to manage our office, or should I say our should say an office in our section in the US. He was kind of like the manager. That's what they called him. But he gave me a lot of confidence. So that's what to me, they could do both. And there were some managers I didn't, sorry, get along with because they were trying to put too much power over us.
Sure, sure.
I mean, is that the right, yeah, like you had mentioned that. And I shouldn't say who, what, when, where, but I think there's just so much uncertainty out there in the world right now. And that's why we need good leadership. And that's why your book and your organization to help with the training. That is so cool that your background, and I love, the Walt Disney's background. I think you were inspired by him and so many other people. So your new book that's coming out is Give Hospitality. That actually, I'm sorry, just came out. What is that one about?
Yeah, so this one was a little bit different for us. It's the first time we've tried a fable. So decided to practice what we preach. I talk a lot and lead with hospitality and a lot of in my keynotes and in our leadership development live learning experiences for leaders. We talk a lot about the power of storytelling. So we decided to put it to the test here. So what I did is I wrote a story about a young up and coming leader who leaves a toxic job with a toxic boss, and she goes to work for a more magical place that I dreamed up in my heart and in my mind called Kauwela Resorts. And Kauwela means summertime in Hawaiian. And the story is about her first 2 weeks on the job when she goes through the orientation experience, which they call hospitality conversations. And all it is they have conversations about the things that matter. And the things that matter to them, Kauwela Resorts, and this brand has become well known for their positive and productive and inclusive workplace culture. And so they spend time with their brand new leaders that have joined the organization, having conversations about their 5 core values: give compassion, give encouragement, give kindness, give hospitality, and give leadership. And so the main character's name is Summer Grace. She goes to work at Kauwela Resorts, and Kauwela means summertime in Hawaiian. So there's a little bit of a hidden meaning there, and that gets unpacked throughout the story, just to remind all of us that when you do start a new job or a new project or a new endeavor, all the things that have happened to you or that you've experienced up to that point were on purpose, because they've prepared you to be able to handle what's going to come your way next. And so that was my way of just a little wink, wink. And then Summer Grace in the story, she realizes that while she was nervous about starting over, starting somewhere new, that she realizes that she's exactly where she's supposed to be.
I like that you made it kind of fiction, is that the right word? It a lot of my background I mentioned before is in publishing, and fiction books seem to have con correlate or connect with people more for some reason because they're I should say dreaming, but they're visualizing, what's going on and what's they're there, and I think they learn more from that maybe. That's just from the feedback I've received from other people. I did do a survey once, like what kind of book do people prefer to read, and then if it is a fiction versus nonfiction, if it's an audiobook, what do you prefer? And people prefer nonfiction books to be narrated by the author, whereas it's just everybody understands deeply how important storytelling is, and it is connecting us with each other with feelings and experiences. And it sounds like you're very adventurous. I think I like that. That is, you're living life. That's kind of how I see it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Try to be anyway. It's way more fun, or usually is way more fun to do that than the alternative. I'm a big Jimmy Buffett fan, so his music certainly does tell stories. It gets you in that mood. It goes hand in hand with hospitality, going
Yeah,
to different islands, or that vacation state of mind. So there's a line from a Jimmy Buffett song. I'd rather die while I'm living than live while I'm dead, kind of thing.
that's true. I like that. I also, because you mentioned that you're in the Vegas area, the Sphere, is that what have you been to the Sphere yet?
Yeah, we recently went over Memorial Day weekend. We went to the Kenny Chesney concert at the Sphere. That was our first experience. And my wife, last month or a couple months ago, she went to the Backstreet Boys, which she has not stopped talking about since. And so I think both of those artists, both Kenny and Backstreet Boys, will be back next year for many residencies. So highly recommend if you haven't been yet, the Sphere is well worth the trip out. And right now they're actually showing Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I saw that in the news. My brother went this summer to see Coldplay. I was very jealous. You didn't tell me. I'm kidding. Because he just said it was a really great experience, and I think they went with their son. Him and his wife went with their son. He's all my nephews and my kids are adults now, but we still try to ingrain that into them. You need to work hard and take life seriously, but then you also need to have fun, and that's what I think reading like your Give Hospitality book probably just ignite memories that people have, and fun stuff. And I just like that you are helping the younger generation, is my understanding, right? It's really the millennials and the Gen Z.
Yeah, that's really where we started. My first book was a self-published book called Ball Games to Boardrooms. Uh,
Okay.
Really from this place at the time, that was back in 2017. And so really so that's 8, 9 years ago. And millennials were getting sort of a bad rap, and I'm kind of straddling the line between millennial and Gen X. I was born in 1979. So at the time I was still working for Disney, but at Disneyland, I led the sales team at Disney Vacation Club. And I had just spent 4 years working here in Las Vegas at the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas, working hand in hand with millennials. And so, yeah, so to this day, a big part of what we do and a big reason of what we do is I never understood why we were hating on millennials. I really didn't.
I don't get it either.
the generation that gave us, like we can thank them for what we're doing right now in large
Right.
part.
The Zoom calls, right.
Leveraging technology and talking about being curious, like finding new ways to experience life and that we can all coexist together. So everything from Facebook to Uber to Instagram, Zoom, but yeah, and then also just different perspectives. So yeah, in the work we do today, it's a mix. We say that we're here to transform jobs into meaningful work. There's a difference.
Yes. Right. You want to have people want a purpose now, right? So, and sometimes you still got to work, do something to make some money, but down the road, as we get a little older, right, we figure out what we know, our knowledge, and that's what you're doing. You're helping people, Taylor, to help them probably find their purpose.
That's right.
And and make sure you have some little fun in there.
Right. Yeah, I heard my favorite author is Mark Sanborn, and he wrote the book The Fred Factor, which is um, four life-changing principles we can all learn from Fred the postman, who was his mailman back in
Yes.
1985. He first moved to Denver, and I loved that book. It sort of changed my outlook on life and work way back in 2003, 2004, when I was a front desk manager working at Walt Disney World back in Orlando at Disney's Pop Century Resort. And I was getting really burnt out and really frustrated. And my mom sent me that book. And I ended up reading the book and I got inspired by it. And then years later, I reached out to Mark Sanborn himself, and I wanted to write blogs that would recognize real life people, what I called real life Freds out in the world. And we struck up a relationship. Of course, he was open to that. He loved that I wanted to write, and kind of link it to his brand and Fred Factor. He ended up hiring me
Oh,
to
awesome.
do keynote speeches on his behalf. He actually taught me how to do keynote speaking. Um, he wrote the foreword to my first book, Ball Games to Boardrooms. And I heard him say one time, there's a way we can all do this to make both money and meaning at the same time. And so that's really another foundational sort of cornerstone of to how we've built all of our content, all of our messaging, and our brand, and the work that we do, and the messages we love to put out is really around that point. There's a way we can pull this off and make money and meaning at the same time.
I like that. We need to you know, talk more about this, I think. I just think it's important, again, important that we're kind to people. Like I think you learn that working in the hospitality business. You are and had to engage with so many different people, types of people, and personalities, right? And it made me think of. I'm just giving you an example. After what happened last week, I try not to look at the news, but it's just I just was still being kind, want to be kind to people. I went to a baseball game. I don't watch sports like that, but it was a free ticket, so we went and had people complimenting my running shoes. And I said, "Are you a runner?" Because I always got different colors. I'm like, "Yeah." And so I'm conversing with them. They could said I could tell I was a real runner because of the brand of shoes that I had. And then the next day at another location, I was wearing a different pair of running shoes, and people are and that's funny how I shouldn't say funny, but to me, you need to be authentic too. And so I now wear at my age, different colored running shoes every day rather than the back of the day, the stupid high heels. But that's what I was learning, just even though we had some bad crap happen last week, um, just need to pause and like, how can we help everybody? That's really what it is. I think that's what your hospitality, leading with hospitality, that is a really something I never really thought about. I mean, probably subconsciously I was, but not consciously.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just love I don't know why. I just fell in love with all things hospitality. And then once I got in it, I fell in love with all things leadership. And so, selfishly for me, I was trying to figure out a link between the two, just to give myself some purpose. And yeah, this is the kind of thing I found. And these were the kind of things, exactly what you're talking about. Or what I not only did I experience them, or have I experienced them in jobs that I have, but I know there's people watching and listening that have experienced the same types of things and can relate to the story like you just told. The thing about kindness is that it's contagious.
Yes.
9 times out of 10, it usually doesn't cost us a thing. And so I believe that there's real competitive advantages that businesses and brands and organizations, as well as leaders and salespeople and marketers and authors and entrepreneurs, there's real competitive advantages
Yeah.
that are for the taking. All we got to do is choose the path to be kind. And it comes from a place of generosity. It really does. If you look up the word kindness in the dictionary, for example, rooted in the whole definition of kindness is it just being generous. And I
Yeah.
like to put it down, either give your time, give your talent, or give your heart to any given person or thing with no expectation of anything in return. That's really the true.
I love that explanation. So people can mix the word up with being nice, and that's different. I
I
think.
agree. I agree. I'll tell this story when I was writing Lead with Hospitality.
Uh-huh.
I was, and you're an author. You get to a certain point, and you're like, all right, what am I gonna do? You think you know where you're going with a certain chapter, and you're like, you often get into these moments where you're like, where am I going to go with this? And so that this chapter, I think it's chapter 6 in Lead with Hospitality, is about kindness, genuine kindness, and I did that on purpose, genuine kindness, because at the outset in my outline and my intention was for that chapter to be on courteousness, to be courteous. And then I realized, I don't know about you, think about it. I remembered, like, I've worked for several different leaders. They were courteous, but it was really fake. So it's possible to be nice, it's possible to be courteous, and it's not very authentic. But genuine kindness removes all the inauthentic components from that. So there is a difference. There's a joke at Disney, actually, that the culture there is violently nice. Well, that can be detrimental. At a certain point, you got to have some healthy debate. At a certain point, you have to bring your own perspectives, and be courageous enough to bring those things up, even if it might differ from somebody sitting up here, sitting across the table, or even your own leaders. So yeah, there's definitely a difference between nice and kind.
I like that. And one of the things I want to ask, you mentioned about the values, and I'm not sure which book it is, but it's the 5 core values. Can you touch on that? I know
Yeah,
kindness, right?
yeah, kindness was one of them. That's from our most recent work, You Give
Okay.
Hospitality. So Summer Grace goes to, learn about how Hawaiian Resorts has been able to become so successful. And remember that the subtitle of this is a hopeful story of what happens when we live, work, and love from a place of generosity. And I just believe these 5 core values: give compassion, encouragement, kindness, hospitality, and leadership, align really well with this whole idea of living, working, and loving from a place of generosity. And then the reason why I chose a Hawaiian theme, the reason why I chose for the name of the resort to be Kauwela Resorts, which means summertime in Hawaiian, is what I found is the spirit of aloha. Like, the aloha spirit is more than just a greeting. In fact, aloha is this way of life, and there's a Hawaiian word for every letter in aloha, and they
Oh,
align perfectly with compassion, encouragement, kindness, hospitality, and leadership. And I encourage everybody to check out the book, check out our website, leadwithhospitality.com. There's actually an action plan that I created, complimentary resource. It's absolutely free, no charge. You can download it right from our website, and it will walk everyone through, and it helps all of us, me included, to hold ourselves accountable for thinking about how can we really bring to life? How can we live out compassion, encouragement, kindness, hospitality, and leadership? So what I've done is I have a G word, an I word, a V word, and an E word, give, that will help all of us bring to life each of these 5 core values. So for compassion, for example, golden rule. When we live by the golden rule, we're automatically inclusive of other people. That's the I word. The V word is validate. So when we're inclusive, we validate other people's strengths, we validate other people's perspectives. And then the E is engage. this new levels of engaging with other people, regardless of what they look like on the outside. They look different from us. They come from different places than us. They sound different from us. So golden rule, inclusivity, validate, and engage. For example, there's a G word, I word, V word, and E word that I believe will help all of us bring to life and live out this idea of giving compassion to those in our lives. And then there's a G word, I word, V word, and E word for the rest of those 5 core values as well, which you can find on the action plan and in the book.
I like the analogy that you created. Analogies resonate with people. They understand it more. It gives it more in-depth feeling to it. It has a feeling to it. So I guess my one last question for you for the what is one takeaway for the listeners that they need to do in their life if they need to lead with hospitality? That's what popped into my mind. What do you think is one takeaway for them that they need to do?
Yeah, if you want to lead with hospitality, and by that, I mean, like, do you want those people that you're leading, do you want them to feel? You want them to feel the right feelings that are going to compel them on the inside to go perform on the outside. If you're a leader of teams, leader of people, and you want to get more out of them, if you want to take a group of people and turn them into a high performing team of people, and if you want to take that team further quicker, then we've got to really make sure that we make them feel welcome, comfortable, and important. And so the subtitle of the book is what I would leave everybody with, and that is to be human, emotionally connect, and serve selflessly. Because the greatest leaders in the world, think about the best leaders you've ever had, the best coaches, teachers, professors, and the greatest bosses you've ever had. Great leaders are not great because of their leadershipness. Great leaders are great because of their humanness. So I encourage
Yes.
everybody to be human, because all the differences we have, different race, different religion, different political spectrums, different ages. There's one thing we all have in common, and that is we're all human beings.
And we definitely need to remember that we're all humans and we need to focus on another word that popped in my head is harmony, be harmonious, right? Is that another kind of in line with being with lead with hospitality is
Absolutely.
gotta have be harmony. So Taylor, where can people find you online?
Leadwithhospitality.com. We have all of our information on there, all 3 of our books, all of our learning experiences, leadership, customer service, even facilitators. If you're somebody that does this sort of work and you're looking to up your game and upskill, we call it edutainment. So we have a whole program called Edutainment, the art and science of inspiring facilitation. So leadwithhospitality.com is probably the best place to find us. I'm on Instagram at tscott1502. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook and especially LinkedIn. So Taylor Scott on LinkedIn, just type in Taylor Scott, lead with hospitality, and I'll usually pop up.
I love that. And for those that are listening, I'll include the links in the description that Taylor mentioned, just in case. If you're driving, please be safe, right? You just don't know. I like your mindset, Taylor. We're very similar. I like your energy. And I think you learned a lot from being around other people, all the different human beings that are out there in hospitality.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure meeting you. Good luck to
Thank,
everybody.
thanks, guys, for listening.